Recording in progress.
Of what the platform looks like, so you can kind of see how that would be applicable in your AVID courses. Thank you to everyone who introduced yourself in the chat. Also, this is very interactive, so if you have questions, you stop us and we can verbally share. We can also go in the chat. Comfort level, whatever you decide there, but we want to hear from you all as we go through. So if there is anything, feel free to stop me. Perfect. So what is Packback first? So Packback is a writing tool that supports discussion and long-form writing assignments. So we've got two different products here. First is Packback Questions, which is our inquiry-based discussion. So it's students really leading, writing questions and building really curious discussion around content in your course. And then we also have Packback Deep Dives, which focuses on essays and writing assignments. What's really cool about Packback and kind of where you start to see the alignment is in Wicker, right? So writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading are all components inside Packback. So the partnership really makes sense. With the partnership, it came about because districts actually came to us and were like, we want to see this in AVID. And so that's how the conversation really got started. And that's what has brought us here today to the formal partnership that will be fully kicking off in August. Packback started 8 years ago, and we became the market leader around AI instant feedback. So across the country, we have schools using every state. And then 2 years ago, we started in K-12 in a large part because of the interest driven from state schools using down the street of other K-12 institutions. So Packback is teaming up with AVID to support all students to really help them find their voice and honing skills needed on their college and career journeys. So AVID has over 4 decades of experience supporting students as they work on college and career readiness. And through this partnership, AVID will be able to support students in a new age of learning through the use of Packback's AI instant feedback for student writing and help them develop the skills that they really need to be prepared for their futures. So Packback will be available to AVID elective teachers grade 9 through 12 and AVID Excel teachers grade 7 and 8 as part of membership. So it's really built on pedagogy, how we kind of all fit together here, which I'm going to kind of jump to next. So Packback is just as much a pedagogical platform and approach, a pedagogical approach as it is a platform. So we are heavily influenced first by Bloom's taxonomy, and then secondly by self-determination theory. So if we really think about how, pedagogy plays a role in AVID, Packback also has that very strongly rooted pedagogical foundation. So they go hand in hand to support students in their learning. And Packback is also focused on supporting teachers to help lighten the workload and allow you to focus on things that matter, which is your content. I think kind of back to my own personal experience teaching, I would have really liked, and I work for Packback, right? But I really love AVID. Secretly, I wanted to work for AVID when I was first leaving, and I was like, I can't move to California. So I was like, maybe not, right? Because it was all kind of before pandemic items with remote work a little bit. But what happens is they fit so well together, and it really goes into a level of not only supporting students with their goals and their learning, but it really helps to support teachers facilitate that and support some of that load that we all kind of know is put on everyone. So with that, I would love to just hear either verbally or from some people in the chat. We'd love to hear just kind of what does student motivation currently look like in your classroom or your school post-pandemic? So just kind of thinking through what that looks like. If anyone wants to share or chime in the chat, that would be awesome.
Is problem solving part of motivation? Should they feel like they don't? Say it aloud.
I'll share. I'll start first. So student motivation in my AVID 9 class, it's high for the most part, but just as similar as pre-pandemic students who are struggling students or at promise students, they continue to struggle. And they're almost like not only academic, but also socially withdrawn. And so getting them to collaborate, that can sometimes be a challenge.
Yeah, I love that answer. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for sharing. I definitely understand that. And I think it's really hard sometimes to find avenues for students to feel like, oh yeah, I can share and I want to share and like I'm brave enough to share. It's sometimes like a confidence piece. So I think that's a very valid kind of reason there. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to share?
I'll share. I hate that this is negative, but this is
That's
what
okay.
I've noticed is that motivation when it comes to the concept of problem solving specifically, if there's an issue, they would prefer someone else to solve it for them rather than figuring it out themselves. Not that I don't have kids that don't problem solve themselves, but for the most part, they're reaching out to other people to do it for them.
Sure. It's like a little bit of like learned helplessness, I think sometimes. And then it's also like the fear of that critical thinking and putting themselves in that position because we all know they can do it. We're like, you can do it and you should. Let's get moving on that. So thank you so much for sharing. That's awesome. And then I see Christy in the chat. Some are highly motivated on their own. A large group need encouragement from others, and a small group only motivated once they see negative impact on their grade, and then they complete an assignment after the fact. Yes, you described kind of every classroom there with the wide range that you have. And I think what's special about, before I turn it over to Brandon, who's going to talk a little bit about Packback and show you a little bit, I think what's special about Packback and AVID is both organizations really help meet students where they are and help level those students up. And that comes from that intrinsic motivation that Packback helps to build. So all of these groups we're talking about, who some are really motivated, they're going to be like, great, this is awesome, fun. Some who need encouragement from others, they're going to get that inside, and they get that from AVID too. And then the small group with the negative impact, like hopefully they'll be inspired in some way and find something cool about the combination of AVID and Packback together. But we'll be able to help support on that end too, with some of the teacher aspects too, of like how you can connect with your students and just kind of support them if we start seeing that negative impact. Thank you all for sharing. That was wonderful. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump to the next slide here and just introduce our first product, and then I'm going to have Brandon take it over. If you have any other points or anything you want to write, feel free to put that in the chat, and we can always come back to that. So I'll introduce Packback questions, and then I'm going to jump over to Brandon here in just a minute. So our first product that you all will have access to is Packback Questions, and this is our student-centered, inquiry-driven approach. This product has been in development over the last 8 years, and again, this is like the reason why we were introduced to AVID is because a lot of districts wanted to see Packback Questions utilized in AVID, especially with costless levels of questioning, Wicker, right? They go really hand in hand, so that's kind of where the partnership started from. This is a quick little loop, a 10-second loop of what our AI feedback looks like in the discussion platform. So we see students able to put in their question, then it goes beyond that and they have to add the description, all while they're getting this instant feedback over here, which Brandon's going to walk through a little bit more deeply. But again, this really pushes students into those higher levels of questions, away from closed-ended questions, really pushing them into levels 2 and 3, connecting with Wicker, right? Like, they're able to problem solve here and build some of their questions out and kind of think through because the feedback is giving them that support. It's not doing it for them, but it's helping them build that confidence and critical thinking skills that we want to see in AVID students. And then it also transcends into their other classrooms. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Brandon here. And Kathleen, I'll get your question in just 1 second in the chat when he takes over.
Perfect. All right, let's dive in and take a look at what Packback looks like. So we're starting off with Packback Questions, which, as Caitlin mentioned, is our inquiry-based discussion tool. Really like to think of this as the formative side of the platform. So this is a place where all discussion assignments can live, and what it will look like is what we're seeing on the screen here. So it's organized by open and closed assignments. Closed assignments are just assignments that either haven't started yet or their due date has passed. So that's kind of the delineation between those two. If I dive into one of these assignments, I can see all of the posts that are related to that assignment, as well as the guide posts that the teacher has set at the top. So when you're creating these, you can actually set expectations for students. Those expectations will live at the top of the page, so students will see them when they first click on that assignment, and they know exactly what's expected of them. So typically, what we're looking at here, this assignment, the requirements were 1 question and 2 responses. Students had 2 weeks to complete that assignment. And so if I'm a student and I want to work on this assignment and ask my question, I'm going to actually go here and click Ask a New Question. So we start off with some initial scaffolding for students here in case they need some help getting started. The AI does need at least 20 words to start giving them some feedback. So these are just there to give them some jumping off points in case they need them. In the interest of time, I'll go ahead and add some demo text here. So what we're seeing on the right-hand side is what the students will see when they start to type. At the top is a curiosity score. So this is really an effort level benchmark for students. It's there to encourage them to write more, add more depth, support their claims with sources. When you're setting up your assignments, you can actually set a minimum curiosity score requirement. So you could say, I want my students to hit at least a 40 curiosity score in order to receive credit on their questions and responses for this assignment. This is there to let them know how they're doing in terms of those expectations. So first thing that I can see here is that my question is a closed-ended question, which we want to encourage them to ask open-ended questions. Of course, this is actually going to cause it to be flagged if they remain a closed-ended question here. So we want to make sure we address that. I'm going to change this to how do open-ended questions support a diverse discussion. And it's already let me know that I've addressed that feedback. Since I've changed that to an open-ended question, that feedback has gone away, and I can rest assured that I can move on to the rest of the feedback. Some other things that factor into the curiosity score: credibility. We want them practicing citing a source, so they have a space to do that at the bottom and help their peers interact with those sources while they're responding to those questions. Communication is going to be largely about formatting, readability. Are they, just posting a big block of text? It'll encourage them to split it into smaller paragraphs, maybe use bulleted lists, things like that to make it easier to engage with. And then convention, of course, we're giving them feedback on things like grammar mistakes, capitalization, punctuation, spelling, all of that is happening as they're writing. So theoretically, they could see here, well, I know my range is a 71 to 100. So when I post this, I know that I'm probably going to be within that range. So I can kind of rest assured that I'm going to hit that minimum curiosity score of 40. Once I do post, I'll see my curiosity score at the bottom. Students won't be able to see other curiosity scores. They'll just see their own. You'll be able to see all of them as their teacher, but they won't be able to see other folks' posts. If I want to respond to one of my classmates' posts, I can actually click this button and add a response. That's going to give me the same type of screen. The only difference here really is that we want them summarizing their thesis and their perspective of their response. So why am I responding to this question? What's my thesis? That sort of thing we're encouraging them to do as well. They'll still get a curiosity score just like they did with the question, and they still have to hit that minimum curiosity score to receive credit once the deadline passes. The nice thing about this too is that once someone responds, I can actually add counter and supporting points specifically. So if I want to dive into more of an argumentative and debate style writing, it'll flag that as a counter or supporting point as well. And then from the teacher side of things, if I'm setting up these assignments, it's really straightforward. So if I go to manage assignments, I can add new assignments. I can move assignments around if I want to. If I want to edit all of my due dates or posting requirements at once, I can do that. If I want to do that individually, I can come in here, and this is what it looks like to create an assignment too. So I can name this assignment, Unit 2. I can change the start and end date. If I want to have an assignment that doesn't have an end date, I just want to leave it open for students to have a space to discuss without a deadline. That's an option as well. And then you can, of course, determine whether you want the assignment to be calculated in percentages or points. That's up to you. And this is where you would leave those requirements. So maybe I want them to do 1 question, 1 response for this one instead of 2 responses. Maybe I want the second assignment to be a 45 minimum curiosity score and start to scaffold that and ramp it up a little bit. And then I can choose to give them half credit for any post that's below that minimum if I want to, or I can choose to give them no credit if they're submitting below that minimum curiosity score. And then once I've done that, that's the assignment and it's in there ready to go. I'm going to pause here if anybody has any questions about this side of the platform.
So I had a question about the questions in the question assignment. So our kids, okay, so the teacher gives the input, right, for the students to discuss. And when the last part where you said, the kids need to have a question and have one question and one response, that is that they need to ask a question in their response, or what was that question that the kids had?
So the students are leading the discussion here. That's a great question. So what essentially the teachers are doing are setting the parameters of the discussion. So saying this discussion is about X, here's what's expected of you for this discussion. From there, the students are responsible for asking their own questions and responding to each other. So what the assignment will look like is if they're responsible for one question and two responses, they have to form their own question. And then they have to respond to two of their peers. It is also going to be possible in the fall to set separate deadlines for those two things as well. So you could say deadlines are due on Wednesday, responses are due the following Wednesday. That type of thing will be possible too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions about questions before we move on? All right. So just to give you an idea of what's kind of happening behind the scenes. So we've got, for students, they're getting that instant feedback while they're writing. Anything that needs to be flagged or revised is going to be flagged to them immediately as well, just like that closed-ended question that I encountered when I was doing the demo of that. For teachers, we want to make this easy to engage with. We actually don't recommend spending more than 15 minutes a week managing the discussion on Packback. We want it to be easy to use. And additionally, if there are things within the discussion that you want students to use, things like pictures, links, mathematical formulas, computer code, anything like that, they can do within the questions and responses as well. So it's pretty interactive. But in terms of you not needing to manage the discussion, this is kind of where that comes in. So what's happening on Packback while they're writing their questions and responses, they're getting that real-time feedback. After they submit their post, the AI is going to check over it again to make sure that they don't have any closed-ended questions. Plagiarism is checked as well, both on Packback, so they can't just copy someone else's question, but also on the internet at large. If it's too short, if there's anything inappropriate, or even if they're posting things like, when's the next test, any of that, in addition to AI-generated text. So if they're using ChatGPT to write for them, we'll catch it and flag it. Anything like that will get flagged. Then it's sent to a team of humans at Packback who are going to look over it with context and determine whether it needs to be moderated from the community. If it does need to be removed, we'll send the student a coaching email letting them know their post was removed, why it was removed, and what they need to do to edit and resubmit for credit. And then from there, they have an opportunity to revise and resubmit. So this is kind of where the formative piece of Packback question comes in. This could happen, this whole process could happen 3 times before the deadline. It could happen once, and then they're like done and ready to move on. Really depends on the students, but we want to give them as many opportunities within that assignment frame to meet those expectations as possible. Excellent. So this, I just wanted to share with you, this is from a community, from a teacher that I work with actually. And this is just kind of showing you what this sort of intrinsic motivation looks like from the student perspective. So this is a real student in a social studies classroom. Their minimum curiosity score was a 40 for these assignments. So their first post, very first post, they're coming in at an 8 curiosity score. They didn't provide any description, they didn't include a source, and they didn't receive credit because they didn't meet that minimum 40 curiosity score. Without any interventions from the teacher, their next post, they were doing kind of a unit by unit sort of Packback model. So their next post in there, same student, right? So on the right-hand side, we're seeing a 75 curiosity score. They're adding, a description, their questions a little bit more involved. They're adding that source that they want their peers to interact with. And what I think is cool about this, yes, a 75 curiosity score is incredible, but what's more incredible to me is that the student didn't stop at a 40, right? That's the intrinsic motivation piece we're talking about. They could have stopped at a 40. they know when they're reaching that 40 range while they're editing their piece, but they're choosing to go further than that and keep reaching for a higher curiosity score because they have the pieces there to know exactly what they need to do to get there. So I'll always love showing that because this is what we see far and wide across Packback questions. Okay, next we're going to take a dive into deep dives, which is our long form writing tool. So this is more of a summative assessment. Think of this as a place where essays, research papers, short answers, anything that's a summative writing grade can go, just to alleviate some of that grading burden on the teacher's end of things. Some of what we'll see in a moment in Packback deep dives, from the student side of things, they're getting a digital writing tutor. So in addition to all the feedback they get in Packback questions, this feedback is tied specifically to the rubric that you create. So you're creating the rubric, and the rubric is telling the AI, here's what I want my student to get feedback on. From there, that's what the students are getting feedback on while they're writing. They also get a digital research assistant, which is really exciting to me. This is giving them credibility feedback on their sources. So when they start putting sources in, it's going to help them cite those sources in whatever format you choose, but it's also going to tell them how credible that source is and why. So it'll say, this is highly credible, it's from a trusted domain, things like that, the checklist of highly credible sources. Conversely, if it isn't credible, it tells them why it's not credible so they can make more informed choices in the future. And then from the teaching side of things, you're getting a digital grading assistant. So what that looks like is those rubrics that you can create and customize. And then the AI is going to suggest scores for mechanics categories so that you can really focus on grading content and you don't have to read too closely for grammar and mechanics mistakes. Those, again, are just suggestions. They're not written in stone. They're just there to give you kind of that first pass. So what that looks like, if we dive over here, Packback Deep Dives is going to live on the left-hand side of your community. And if I go to my assignments, this is where I'll be able to see all of the prompts that are available for my course. So any current assignments that haven't had a deadline pass are going to live here, upcoming assignments, of course, and then past assignments that the deadline has passed. If I click into one of these, this is what the prompt looks like for students and for teachers. Something I did want to mention about Packback questions that just came back to me is that it looks exactly the same for students as it does for teachers. That's not something that I always encounter with EdTech tools. So I always like to point that out. What you're seeing is what students see. The layout's the same. It doesn't look any different. The only differences are that you're able to do more things under the options menu, like coach a student or flag a post, things like that. But visually it looks exactly the same. So same is true here. This is what the prompt looks like. I can see a snapshot of the rubric over here, recommended resources that my teacher has included that I can interact with as I'm working on this piece. If I click into the rubric, I can see the full rubric, how many points each of those mechanics categories are worth, what specifically I need to accomplish here to achieve those full points, and then the content and ideas portion at the top as well. The only thing students can't see are the submissions and feedback tab. That's just for you as the teacher, but everything else looks the same for students. So I'm going to start off with the student side of things. If I want to start my piece, the first time I'm working on this, I'll have a red button, just like Packback questions, that says start my deep dive. But since I already have a draft in here, I'm going to go ahead and, clicked edit assignment instead of what I wanted to. So I'll dive in here, and this is what it looks like from the student side of things. So I have this Word document over here where I can work on my piece. And then on the right-hand side, I've got my feedback from the AI. Same as before, once 20 words are in there, I start to get some feedback. What you'll notice that's different here is that this feedback is rubric specific. So as I'm setting up the rubric, I can determine how many points I want flow and structure to be, what specifically I want to focus on there. So here I can see, I know this category is worth 9 points. Looks like I'm doing a good job here. If I want some more granular feedback, like if I'm getting some notifications that something's wonky, or maybe I need to look at something, I can click in to see the full feedback and even see like point by point. So sentence to sentence flow, sentence depth, ease of reading, hedge words, that sort of thing, and flow and structure. What's extra cool about this though, is that if I'm getting some feedback on transitional phrases and I don't know what those are as a student, I can click anything that has an eyeglasses icon next to it, and it's going to highlight that in my text. So I can see if I'm worried about transitional phrases, this is going to highlight for me anytime I'm using a transitional word or phrase, so I can kind of glance through and find those really quickly without having to read too closely. Same thing's true of grammar and mechanics. You know, if I'm looking at this and I see, well, looks like I have a warning on some grammar issues, I'm going to go ahead and click that eyeglasses icon, and I'm going to see all the places that I'm getting some feedback on grammar, so I can address those quickly. What's also neat is we give students this research notes tab here, which gives them a place to keep track of anything they're interacting with on the web that they might want to use as a source. Caitlin, did you want to say something else? Like, come off mute.
Nope, all good, Brandon, keep going.
Okay, so this is just for the student, for them to keep track of quotes, sources, web sources, book sources, articles, anything they're interacting with that they might want to use in their piece. If I do find something that I want to use, I can actually right-click, mark it as a source, whatever type of source it may be, which is going to do two things for me. The first thing it's going to do is give me that credibility feedback that I talked about before, so I can see that this is a credible source. If I click that, it's going to give me more context. So it'll say, you know, websites can range dramatically in their credibility. Something that's working for me here is that it's a well-visited website. I did link to the raw domain though, so it's not linking to a specific article, which is hurting my credibility here. If I want this to be more credible, I need to link to a specific article, and that'll bump up my credibility there. The other thing that it does when they mark a source is it starts to cite that source for them. And when you're setting up your assignment, you can actually choose what format you want that to be in, and then it will help them to cite that source in that format. So it's taking the information we have here and just letting them know in red what we need to edit and include in order for it to be a fully valid citation. So that's the student side of things. Any questions about the student side before I dive into the teacher side?
I had a question. When you were checking for the grammar and or any of the eyeglass things, if so they could see what their problems were, but how do they know how to fix? Does it help them fix those problems? Does it give them suggestions? Like if you clicked on something, it would say, here's how you fix it?
Great question. So for the grammar, it will do that specifically. So like in this first one here, if I look at this, let me dive in, jump to highlight. It'll give them suggestions. So like here it says in regard to, I can change that in the moment if I want to.
Oh, instead of in regard or with regard. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they can go through kind of similar to Grammarly, and just kind of highlight by highlight, see what the suggestion is for changing that. And then additionally, like things like hedge words, for example, if I look in flow structure here, if I get some feedback on hedge words and I'm not sure what that is, it actually gives them a little link to click that takes them to like internal Packback. Here's what a hedge word is. So if they're not sure, they can interact with that and get some feedback. Hopefully they won't ask you that and they can just kind of like dive in themselves.
I have another question. So say that they used AI and like they plagiarized their writing and they put that in, would the feedback like identify and like say that like, hey, this is not your writing, or how would that work?
Yeah, so they'll get a flag notification if that's found. It does take a little while for that to happen. So like if they did that, 10 minutes before they were submitting, they probably wouldn't get that notification. You would as the teacher, but it will tell them if it's at risk of being flagged for plagiarism or AI generated content. We just call that an originality report because we want it to be students' original work. But yes, they'll be notified that it might be flagged that way before they turn it into you, so that should alleviate any of that happening.
And just to add, you get notified on your end if there is a percentage of it as well. So it's looking at that generative AI text that we don't want students to be using, where we want them to be taking the information from the AI used in Packback to support like their actual learning and writing and not just copy and pasting.
Exactly. And I'll show you what that looks like in the teacher view too, so you can see. So as a teacher, once I want to create my assignment, it's really straightforward. It just walks you through the process. So if I'm setting up a prompt I'll have this sort of menu here. I can add my prompt title, a short description, which I like to think of as a subtitle. It's just going to live at the top of the page under the prompt. Long description is where the bulk of the expectations come from for the students. Guiding questions are really great because they're questions you want students to answer specifically within the piece. And when you go to grade, you can actually click those questions and it will highlight in the student's work where we think they've addressed that question. So it kind of saves you from having to skim through for the answers to those questions. It'll just say, here's where we think that student answered one of your guiding questions. Recommended resources you want them to interact with while they're writing. And then, of course, you can save them for the future, too. So if you're using them year after year, you don't have to create them every single time. The rubric is where we tell the AI what we want it to focus on. So this is customizable, too. It'll be even more so in the next month. But the top categories are all AI assisted, which is what we were looking at in the student view. And so this is where I can say, I want, word count and depth. Maybe I want that to be 10 points. You can set your minimum word count. You can even set a maximum. You can block the submission if they're outside of that range. So if they're outside of it, they won't actually even be able to submit. This is also looking for repetitive text. So if they're using the same phrase over and over again, it'll say, hey, you've used this sentence 5 times. Let's find a different way to say that. Grammar and mechanics is also looking at active voice and passive voice, consistent narrative voice throughout the piece, in addition to, capitalization, punctuation, spelling, all that stuff. And then the nice thing about these two is that if I'm not that worried about word count, I can choose not to include this, but that student is still going to get that feedback. So it just tells them it's not part of the grade, but they're getting feedback on it, regardless of whether it's part of the grade or not. Flow and structure is looking at readability, paragraph length. Are they using transitional words and phrases between their paragraphs so their ideas flow from one to the other logically? That's the type of feedback they'll be getting there. Research and citations, of course, you can set a minimum number of sources that students have to include, and that's where they're getting that credibility feedback as well. And then formatting is where you'll go in and determine which format you'd like it to be in, and it'll help to guide them in those citations. Content and ideas, this is where you'll leave all of your content criteria. Right now we have 4 categories here. I believe in the next month, it'll be much more customizable. So you'll be able to rename these and add different categories, things like that, to make that a little bit more editable for you. But this is where you'll just leave your content criteria for students and whatever point value you'd like to ascribe to that. And then, of course, you can save the rubric for the future, too. Once you've done that, you just choose who you want it to be assigned to, so your Packback classroom, and then when you want it to be released to them and when the deadline is, and whether or not you'd like them to be able to submit after their deadline. Once you have that, and students start submitting, you'll go to your submissions tab. So this is what grading looks like, and this is something I wish I would have had when I was teaching, because I did teach middle school writing for a while, and it took a long time to grade. But what it looks like is I can click in the submission. I'm going to see the student writing on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side is where I see those AI recommended scores for the mechanics categories, and then a space for me to leave content-specific scores at the bottom. So, for word count, actually, I'm going to look at grammar and mechanics here. It's recommending a 13 out of 15 based on the rubric. If I want to see what the rationale is there, I can click see why. And that's going to tell me, okay, so right here, I'm seeing that maybe the student didn't use appropriate grammar the whole time. Looks like their language and profanity is fine, and even passive voice is okay. This is where that's bumping down their score, and it's because this is weighed in much more heavily than the rest of these categories here. I can even click this little smart highlight here, and it's going to show me where all those concerns are. From there, I can change that if I disagree with it, or if a student needs an accommodation and I want to just adjust that score, I can. Those are just suggestions. They're not set in stone by any means. And then I would leave my content score for them and any overall feedback I have for them at the bottom. If I want to leave specific feedback about a certain sentence, I can actually highlight that and add a comment there specifically for that piece. So inline commenting too. Additionally, if I click on AI grading assistant tools, this is where I'll see smart highlights for those guiding questions. So, here, do you think an internship program should be offered in your school? It's looking like they didn't actually address these questions. If they had, it would say that it was detected, and I could highlight that but it's looking like they didn't answer those questions here. Additionally, this is where that originality report comes from. So this is telling me right here that it's a high risk for plagiarism. It's 5% original text, and it's a moderate risk of being generated by AI. So if I look here, these links at the bottom here are telling me where matching text is coming from on the web. So since this is a high plagiarism risk, that means we were able to identify somewhere on the internet where it matched pretty closely. If I click that, it tells me exactly where the website is. I can look at a side-by-side comparison too of what text was matched from that source, including if they replaced any of that text, if they added anything, if they deleted anything. You can see that information too. So that's coming in there. And then once that's all done, I took a look at this. I agree with all these. I marked my content score, gave them my feedback. I could save and update that in the gradebook, and then that's good to go. And then once that's done, you can download a grading report as an Excel file that'll just give you like all the grades there, and then submissions can be downloaded in bulk too as like a Word document. Any questions about the teacher side of things and deep dives?
I have a quick question. To grade them, I saw you click the edit button. Is that what you click to look at and access all of the things that you just showed us? Or did you click on, like, what button did you click?
Great question. So I clicked the edit button because this one was already kind of in process. This is our internal one. Let me see if I actually find one that doesn't have any or has some that aren't graded yet. Yeah, okay. So if you haven't started grading them, it'll have this blue button right here that says grade submission. But if you've already started to grade it, it'll have the edit button next to it. Either one will take you to that screen. Good question. Cool. Any other questions?
Brandon, there are a few questions in the chat. If I could just read you them real quick.
Yes, please.
Kathleen asked, it was a previous slide, and I'm not quite sure, Kathleen, which slide it was, but so correct me if you need to share anything here, but just saying, computer code language is also given feedback through Packback, asking if computer code language is given feedback through Packback.
Ooh,
So
that's a great question.
There was a slide that had two components on it, and it was like what the students get, and then
oh, I know what you're talking about.
2 slides about the other one. Yeah, the first one.
This one.
Yeah. Plus best in class discussion features. Embed.
Yeah, so they don't get feedback on code if they're writing code on there. That's just kind of telling you that it's possible for them to include code. We're not going to give them any like feedback about it though. We're just looking at like.
I was super excited because we have like an engineering academy, and they have the kids writing code. I'm like, can they get feedback on code? That would be fabulous.
I would not
maybe in the future.
I was going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the future.
Yeah, the cool thing about Packback too is like we take a lot of feedback, and a lot of what you see, like we're constantly evolving of like trying to get better and change things, and it all comes from teacher feedback. So that is one thing that like I've seen things be put in because teachers asked for it. So, you know, ask for it and you let us know. And then Brandon, one more, is there a bank of deep dives assignments already if I wanted to take one as opposed to using my own for the first time?
Ooh, great question. So right now, and Caitlin can probably provide some more context about AVID specific prompts, but there will be some lessons available for folks to use with Packback. So, but from there, something else that's neat is like if you have co-teachers or if there are other people in your school that you want to share stuff with, if you're part of the same community, like if I go to create a new assignment and I want to select one of my saved prompts, any prompt from any community that I'm part of is going to live here. So I can just grab those and add them in really quickly. So once they start to be saved up, they're in there too. But we'll have some materials that'll be shared with you that you can use as well. And that is something that we're looking into for the future in terms of having like a prompt library. We just have to build it out. Deep Dives is actually quite new. It only got released to the public in like February. And back to Caitlin's point about teacher feedback, those pieces where like you click the eyeglasses and the students get highlights in there, those are all submissions and new things that were added in the last like month or so from teacher feedback. So we listen to your feedback and we implement it really quickly too. A lot of us are former educators. I think that's part of it.
Yep. And then one more, do teachers have access to students' work along the way in deep dives to see their progress, or only when it is submitted?
Great question. So once they've submitted, you'll be able to see it, but they can submit before the deadline passes. So they don't have to wait until the deadline to submit. They still can edit after they've submitted as well. As long as the deadline is still active, they can still edit. So if they submitted on day one, you can see that submission, and they still have an opportunity to edit it and all of that before they submit for the final time. After the deadline passes, they won't be able to edit it anymore, but up until then, they'll be able to.
Yeah, and that's just an important thing to note is their work gets saved. Like a Google Doc, they can come back just kind of tapping into that again.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it auto saves every like 30 seconds. So no computer ate my homework excuses, the new dog ate my homework. Good questions. With that, I know we only have 15 minutes left. So what I want to do next is I'm going to dive back into our presentation here and get you all set up. So let's do this. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for you to sign up as well. But if you want to use your phone, you're welcome to use that QR code. I just like creating QR codes. Let's do this. Cool. And this is, students will use this to sign up as well. And you can either bookmark this, or if you literally search Google for sign up for Packback, it's like the first link that comes up. So really quick and easy. And all you're entering here is your school email. You'll see this page, and a password. Create a password for yourself. Once you've done that, it'll just ask you to review the terms. Just for your context, we're very serious about data privacy. We actually subscribe to European standards for data privacy, which are much more intense than the United States standards. So that's kind of all covered there. And then you can skip the avatar creation for now and come back to that later. But that is something I would obviously recommend setting parameters for with students, because they really enjoy the avatar creation aspect. Go ahead, Kayla.
And actually, Brandon, that's in the lesson. So it's already there. You don't have to do it. I have it built in. You'll have 12 AVID Excel lessons, 12 AVID elective lessons that you'll have access to in the WAG and the DPG. There will be more information on that. They're not there yet, but that will be coming.
Wonderful. All right. And if you could just give me like a plus sign in the chat once you have your account created, I'll move on once most of us are there. Perfect. Okay, it looks like we're almost all there, so I'm going to move on so we can get to the community creation part. So if you have finished, yes, Joanna, they can use either. So whichever you prefer, you can recommend to them to use. So if they do have a district specific email, they can use that. Some schools don't, so they can use their personal email, but it's up to you. And that's where all of our communications about, any feedback that you give them will show up there. If their post is flagged or moderated, that's going to show up there. It additionally will show up in this little notification bell on the platform itself too. So once you have your account created, you should be taken to your profile page here. If you're not seeing that, let me know, but it should take you there first. Perfect. And then once you're there, you're going to click this red Create a Community button. From here, you're going to type in your district. We've already got you in there, so that's great. And then the name of your course, how many students are expected in that course, can be an estimate. If you are estimating, try to underestimate, but it doesn't have to be an exact number by any means. Your start date, I would just put as today, just so you can play around with it and find it easily. And then the end date, whenever you want the community to expire. You can change the end date later too, so just keep that in mind. You can skip subject matter tag, and then under instructor, you're just going to want to search for your name. Oh, great question, Jackie. So if you're not seeing that page, you should see your account at the top. If you just click that button and click my profile, that'll take you to that page. And if you're not seeing that, you can unmute it.
Yeah, we're not seeing that.
Send verification email?
Do we have to verify our email? It's telling us we need to verify our email address in our system.
Oh, okay. You will need to do that, but you actually don't need to do that to sign in. You should be able to just go to the website and use your password that you just created to sign in. So let me double check, because you might have.
We're in our profile, but we don't see we see a find a community, but we don't see create a community.
Brandon, we could have one person try to click the verify and see if that fixes it.
I think it's because some of us signed up as a regular member, so I just have to switch folks to instructors real quick.
Oh, okay. That makes
Could
sense.
be. Sorry, that was we were fast. We were trying to do it
It's
fast.
good.
No,
I'm-
love it. Plus, that's a good note for us to say, sign up as a teacher. I
Yeah,
verified, but it's still showing past or current communities. Chrissy, can you just refresh the page and see if that helps? If you.
Let's see. I think I got everybody.
I
It's
verified.
coming up now as create
Yeah.
community. I refreshed. Thanks.
Okay.
Perfect. Yay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good job,
Sweet.
Brandon. Coming in, saving the day. Love it.
It happens sometimes. I had that ready to go just in case. Sweet. So once we're there, red button, create a community. You're going to put in your high school, name of your course, approximately how many students, doesn't have to be exact. Start date as today, and I'm actually going to create one with you too. I'm going to put my end date as tomorrow, just so I'll have another community in there. But
Brandon, I'm still seeing your profile page.
oh, whoops.
There you go.
I paused to
Perfect.
keep on that for you.
Yep,
Cool.
no worries.
Invitation emails we don't have to worry about right now. Subject matter tag we can skip. And then as an instructor, you just want to post yourself and you should come up. Add an instructor. We want to choose the Packback platform suite. If you're seeing a price there, don't worry about that. We can change that on the back end later, so you won't be charged. I promise. And then the only other thing you have to do is click assignment-based grading. That's what we want. And then create a new community.
We're still having troubles. I'm able to create a community, but the other team members aren't able to create a community
Okay,
at a ROSI.
let me double check.
And just checking, has everyone refreshed their page? Because sometimes that's all it just needs a little refresh.
Let's see.
I also, sorry. I also logged out and then re-logged in and it's still not showing.
Ah, okay. I think it was just, I was cross-checking the folks who were in the Zoom, and I think I missed some folks that aren't there, but there we go. Okay, let's see. I think that should be good now if you refresh. Got Rachel and Eliana in there too. Cool.
Brandon, really quickly, what was the thing you made sure to check before you clicked on create a new community?
Assignment-based grading at the bottom is what we want. So
Okay.
it'll say, yeah, deadlines or assignments. We want assignment-based grading. It's just much more flexible.
That's not, my two options for customizing the community, I can either select the Packback platform suite or customize products. The assignment-based grading checkbox isn't showing up.
Oh, interesting.
Same over here.
It's not showing up at the bottom here either.
No, and there's a
No.
price per student showing up.
Yeah.
No, I don't have like the admin, like what you have. I don't see beneath like the admin only community settings. That does not show up.
Okay, cool. I'll switch it for you on the back end. That's no problem.
Thanks.
And we'll make sure that there's no price associated with it too.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. We're seeing the Packback platform suite or customized products.
Cool. So yeah, you can just move forward with you want suite and then create community, and then we'll just make sure to take the price off after the meeting's over and switch you to assignment-based grading. Cool.
So we have a question. So when we're creating a community, is that like if you think about a school schedule, is that one period?
Ooh, good question. So a community would be your whole course. Even if you have different class periods, within that you can create different sections for that course and name them whatever you want to. So just have one community for the whole course, and then you'll split that up into sections. Once you have it created, just to give you kind of a glimpse of what it looks like to finish the setup, it gives you kind of a checklist of things to do before it's completely set up. One of those things is creating section groups. So if you have multiple class periods or sections, you can create those there. And that will differentiate your gradebook and just give students a place to go that's just for their class.
Does it matter like the date we start the community? Can we say it starts now? Or does it need to be when the students show up in school?
It can definitely start now. The only thing that's different there is for you where it shows up. So if you set it for the future, it'll show up under your upcoming communities. You'll still be able to interact with it and create your settings and all that stuff. That just means that students can't join it yet, but whichever is easiest for you. I like just doing it as today so I can just see it when I first log in. I don't have to be like, where's my community? Something else you can do here too, of course, your deep dives assignments, you can add teaching assistants or other adults that you want to have access to your community as well. And then when you're, the first time you're going in to create your assignments, it gives you the opportunity to create a bunch of them at once. So if like, I'm going to want to do a Packback discussion every 2 weeks for the first semester, maybe I'm doing, 10 assignments. I can even make sure all of the deadlines are every other week on Wednesday at 8 a.m. I can do that if I want to do that all at once, and then say for every single assignment, my requirements are going to be the same. If I don't want to do that, I can just do them one at a time. Either way. And then we are coming up on time here. So just a couple housekeeping things that I want to share with you all. So for students to join, really important. What they're going to do is sign up just like you did. When they're on their profile page, just like a lot of us did when we were regular members, they won't have this option here that'll say, looking to join a community you don't see here. And what they're going to do is paste your specific code in that little search bar. So you can email with them, project it on the board, whatever's easiest. But to find that in your community, when you're looking at your Packback community, it's just going to be under your course details right at the top. So you'll click view course details, and your community lookup key is right here, and you can just copy it right from there. And that's just going to take them to your community the first time. Once they've joined your community initially, it'll just live under their profile. They won't have to do that every time they're logging into Packback. It's just that initial how they find you step. And then after we're done chatting today, I'll send you a follow-up email that has a recording of today's training. It'll have like a bunch of help articles and resources for you to check out. Additionally, those office hours I mentioned will be on there too. So if you have any questions at any moment, you can pop in, ask your question. We can walk through stuff together. If you're playing around with deep dives and you're like, gosh, it'd be really helpful if someone would just like sit with me and help me create a prompt for deep dives, happy to do that. I do that with a lot of teachers. So we can do that one-on-one if you'd like to do that too. So you're not on your own after this, just so you know. And then we'll make sure that those prices are adjusted and you're switched over to assignment-based grading too.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that. I know it's like, it might feel there's a lot of pieces to learn. The best way is just to play around. In Packback, you really can't break anything. Brandon is amazing and will be able to help if there's any questions. We also have our support team who's available 24/7. So we're very much here if you need anything, and are very excited to be able to support everyone as they start up again in the fall. If you do have any initial reactions, thoughts, you can either share them in the chat, come off mute. I just like to hear if there's anyone who wants to share about how this will work in your AVID courses and other courses. Otherwise, Brandon, is there anything else besides that?
No, I don't think so. Keep an eye out.
I'm really excited because my AVID kids are going to be seniors, so I can see this being really helpful for like personal statement essays and stuff like that. Like especially the originality, curiosity, grading of it.
I love that. And if they do decide to go the college path, like they might see Packback at their college. We're in a lot of different higher ed and community colleges across the US. So that could be something that's very beneficial to them. So thank you so much, Eliana. That's awesome. If anybody else has anything they can share.
Sorry,
Christy.
Sorry, Christy, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. So what would you recommend as far as like, I'm the AVID coordinator, but I'm also an AVID teacher, but if I'm helping like set up, since the prompts and the deep dives are not like embedded in the course already or in Packback already, if I were to like get them out of the WAG for Excel, well, get them out of the WAG for the AVID elective or get them out of the Excel curriculum, whatever is formatted or figured out for the 12 lessons you had said, would you recommend me doing like a community and then adding the other teachers on as teaching assistants? Or how would you recommend, like if we just had one person like enter all the prompts to then share them out?
Brandon, I'm going to toss that to you.
So what I would do in that situation is add folks to your community as teaching assistants, because what that's going to do is make sure that anything that you create or upload into Packback is also available in their profile. So for example, if you have a deep dives prompt that you add to your community, if they're a teaching assistant, that's also going to be in their library of prompts. So if they go to create their own in a different community and they click select save prompts, they'll be able to see the ones from any community they're a teacher or a teaching assistant. That's what I would do for that.
Thank you.
Of course.
And then Cynthia, I saw you come off mute. Do you have something as well?
I think for myself, thinking with the lens of ELs, using Packback for their writing, I think will be really beneficial if we can work together and figure out how it all works when school starts.
Yes, and I think those lessons that are built into both the WAG and the DPG to start will really help kind of scaffold that. My goal is really to support with those lessons, so it's really easy and teachers and students alike are like, okay, we got this. And that's why we're also here to help. So those are some of the goals. And, if there's feedback you ever have and you're like, hey, this could have been better by X, always open for that because I care that they are supporting students, EL students, kind of everyone across the board. So that is something as well. But I think those lessons will really support with getting everyone started and kind of figuring it out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course.
And while we're answering those questions, I was able to switch everyone over to assignment-based grading. So you'll be able to play around with that right now. And I'll email the help team to make sure that you don't see any weird pricing. But other than that, keep an eye out for that email from us. It'll be coming out in 2 hours. It'll have that recording and then just a whole bunch of resources for you, including those office hours and my contact information as well. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. And thanks for coming. It was really fun to hang out with y'all.
Yeah, thank you everyone for the questions and comments. I have a few extra minutes if anyone has any further questions. Brandon does too. Otherwise, we hope you have a great rest of your day and thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Caitlin, I have one more quick question. It might be in the email that you guys send out later, but where would we find those 12 lessons for AVID Excel and AVID Elective?
Yep, they will be right within the WAG and the DPG. So they'll be like right embedded inside.
Okay.
There's going to be plenty on, I believe, on my AVID, like showing like Packback and AVID, here are the lessons. You will see things. And I think I'm talking with the AVID team now, but Brandon will probably be able to send out like, hey, check out these lessons and share those. So you will see things as they come through.
Okay. Are they live up now or are
They
they
are not live up
Okay.
now. It's more of like, they are coming, we promise. But
Okay.
we're still working on all of them, just kind of building them out, formalizing them, especially with SIs and things. So like,
Right.
there's just a lot in the summer here. But they will be ready and be in the WAG and the DPG.
Okay. Will Packback get mentioned at an AVID Excel? Because I'm facilitating some SIs for one COP, but then I'm attending as an AVID Excel. Will it be mentioned at all? Or is it just because our school got picked and it's not everybody who's doing AVID Excel that has access to it? I'm just trying to understand
Great question.
access.
Great question. So it is available for all AVID elective grades 9 through 12 and AVID Excel grades 7 and 8. So we're
Okay.
doing a soft launch kind of right now with the demo sites, right?
Right.
There will be a video at SI. It mentions Packback briefly at the end, but there will be a QR code that people can sign up for these sessions here.
Okay.
But it will be pushing them towards August. So that's when that like official launch starts.
Okay. Well, no, that's good to know because I'm sure participants will be asking me. And so I'll know a little bit to share
The video
with them.
is cool. Tell them to sign up using the QR code. That will be like awesome so that they can see and get
Okay.
those sessions. Yeah.
Will the video be at the general session?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe.
Good to know.
Yep. It will be, I think it's on the second day of.
The general session's usually
Yep.
the second day with the student speakers and stuff. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Awesome, Christy. We're excited too. You let us know if you need anything, and I hope you